The courtroom was crowded that morning. Everyone was whispering, waiting for the case to begin. The man sitting at the defense table looked nervous. His hands were shaking, and his eyes were fixed on the door. He kept looking at it again and again, hoping to see his lawyer walk in. But the chair next to him stayed empty. His lawyer hadn't arrived. It was a big case, one that could destroy his reputation and his business. He had spent years building everything from scratch, and now it all depended on this one trial. His only support in that moment was his daughter, sitting quietly in the back row. She watched her father's face, full of worry, and felt her heart ache. The clock kept ticking. The judge entered, everyone stood up, and still the lawyer didn't show. The man lowered his head and whispered, "It's over. He's not coming." His daughter wanted to comfort him, but words wouldn't come out. She knew her father was innocent, but what could she do? She wasn't a lawyer. She had never stood in a courtroom like this before, but she had spent nights going through her father's case files. She had read every document, every word, trying to understand what went wrong. She knew all the details more than anyone else did. She believed that if someone would just listen, they would see the truth. But now, no one was there to speak for her father. When the judge asked, "Is the defense ready to begin?" no one replied. The man's silence filled the room. The prosecutor looked confident, almost smug, already imagining victory. The people sitting in the gallery whispered to each other, assuming the case was lost. Then, suddenly, the girl stood up. Her hands were trembling, but her voice didn't break when she said, "Your Honor, if the lawyer isn't here, may I speak for my father?" The entire courtroom turned toward her. The prosecutor gave a short laugh and said, "This isn't a school debate, young lady. Sit down before you make a scene." But she didn't sit. She took a deep breath and said, "I'm not here to argue for fun. My father's life depends on this. He's innocent, and I can prove it." The judge looked at her carefully. She was young, dressed simply, holding a stack of papers close to her chest. For a few seconds, he didn't say anything. Then, with a calm but curious tone, he said, "Very well. You may proceed, but remember, this is a court of law, not emotion." She nodded. Her father tried to stop her, whispering, "Don't do this. You'll only make things worse." But she looked into his eyes and said softly, "I can't just sit here and watch them take away everything you worked for." And then, she began to speak. Her voice was soft at first, but it carried honesty and courage. She didn't talk like a lawyer, she talked like a daughter who believed in her father. She started by explaining who her father really was, how he built his small company with honesty and hard work, how he helped others even when he didn't have much himself. People in the courtroom, who had been whispering before, now listened quietly. There was something different in her words. They weren't filled with big legal terms. They were filled with truth. Then she started asking questions to the witness on the stand. "You said you saw my father signing that paper, right?" she asked. The witness nodded. She walked closer and showed a copy of the document. "Can you tell the court what date this was signed?" The witness looked confused for a moment. "It was March 12th, he said. "Are you sure?" she asked again. "Yes," he replied firmly. She turned to the judge and said, "Your Honor, this signature can't be my father's. On March 12th, he was in the hospital with a broken leg. Here's the medical report and photos." The courtroom went silent. Even the prosecutor looked surprised. The witness's face turned pale. She didn't stop there. One by one, she pointed out small mistakes that no one had noticed before. Mismatched dates, missing pages in the evidence, strange changes in the witness's story. Each detail made the people in the courtroom shift in their seats. The judge leaned forward, listening carefully now. What started as a young girl's desperate attempt to defend her father was turning into something powerful. The prosecutor tried to interrupt, saying, "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. She has no legal authority to speak here." But the judge raised his hand and said, "Let her continue. I want to hear this." The girl continued with confidence now. Her fear was gone. Every sentence came from her heart, backed by proof she had found while studying the case at night. She showed how the documents had been edited and how some evidence didn't match the official records. As she spoke, her father watched her with tears in his eyes. He had never seen her like this, brave, determined, unshaken. She wasn't a lawyer, but she was doing something no one else dared to do, standing up for what was right. By the time she finished, the room was completely silent. Everyone stared at her, even the guards by the door. The judge finally spoke. "I must say, young lady, I did not expect this level of understanding from someone without formal training." She smiled faintly and said, "I didn't study law, Your Honor. I just studied the truth." The hearing ended for the day. The judge postponed the next session to review the new evidence she had presented. The prosecutor packed up his files silently, his confidence clearly shaken. As she walked out of the courtroom with her father, people whispered and looked at her with respect. Some even smiled. A few reporters tried to talk to her, but she just held her father's arm and said softly, "Let's go home." Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter somehow, but just as they reached their car, she noticed something tucked under the windshield. It was a folded note. She picked it up, unfolded it slowly, and read the words written in shaky handwriting. "You should have stayed silent." Her father saw the note and looked at her with concern. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. She looked around. No one was there. The parking lot was quiet. She put the note in her bag and said, "Nothing. Just someone who doesn't like the truth." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just someone being upset. Someone out there was scared of what she had just revealed in court. That night, as she sat by her desk at home, the case files spread out in front of her, she didn't feel fear. She felt stronger. The note didn't frighten her, it only confirmed that she was on the right path. She whispered to herself, "If they think I'll stop now, they're wrong." Her journey had just begun. She didn't know how hard the next steps would be, or how many people she'd have to face. But she knew one thing for sure: she would not give up until her father's name was cleared completely. And somewhere in the middle of all the chaos, a quiet realization came to her. Maybe this was what she was meant to do all along, to fight for justice. Even without a title, even without a degree. Because sometimes, truth doesn't need a lawyer. It just needs someone brave enough to speak it. The next morning, the sun was just rising when she sat at her small table with papers spread everywhere. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was sharper than ever. The note from yesterday, "You should have stayed silent," was still in her bag. She had read it again and again, not with fear, but with determination. Whoever had written it didn't scare her. It only made her more certain that her father's case had hidden secrets. Her father walked into the room slowly, holding a cup of tea. He looked worried. "You don't need to do this anymore," he said softly. "You already helped enough yesterday." She looked up from the papers and said, "No, I haven't. I just opened one door, but behind it are many more lies. Someone tried too hard to make you look guilty, and I want to know why." He sighed deeply. "I'm proud of you, but this is dangerous." "You saw the note." She smiled faintly. "That note told me one thing. They're afraid that we might find the truth." Her father didn't reply. He knew once she made up her mind, nothing could stop her. She was calm but unbreakable. She spent the whole day looking through every page again. There were invoices, letters, meeting notes, and contracts. Most of them looked ordinary, but one small detail caught her eye. There was a signature, not her father's handwriting, but a fake one that looked similar. She had seen her father's signature 1,000 times, and this one was slightly tilted differently. Her heart started to race. She picked up another document and saw the same fake signature again. Someone had copied his name on multiple papers, to make it look like he had agreed to something he never did. That night she didn't sleep. She searched online, reading about how people fake signatures and alter contracts. The more she learned, the clearer it became. This was not a simple mistake. Someone had planned this carefully. The next day in court, the room was full again. This time, everyone's eyes turned toward her as soon as she entered. The young girl who had stood up yesterday was now seen as someone who had shaken the courtroom with her courage. The judge looked at her with a gentle but serious expression. "Are you ready to continue?" he asked. Double quotes. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied confidently. The prosecutor smirked, still trying to look calm. "So, we're letting amateurs handle legal defense now," he said sarcastically. The judge shot him a sharp look. "She has earned the court's respect. Proceed, young lady." She walked to the front and said, "Yesterday, I showed how some of the documents were inconsistent. Last night, I found something even more important." The courtroom became quiet. Everyone was waiting. She lifted one paper and held it high. "This is the contract they said my father signed. But look closely. The signature here is not real. It's been copied and printed." The prosecutor interrupted quickly. "That's nonsense. How can you tell?" She smiled slightly. "Because I compared it with his bank documents and identification. His signature always tilts slightly to the left. This one tilts to the right. And if you zoom in, you'll see printer marks, not pen ink." Gasps filled the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward to see it. She continued, "Your Honor, this fake document was used as proof that my father accepted a deal he never even knew about. The people behind this wanted to frame him." The judge looked toward the prosecutor. "Do you have anything to say?" The prosecutor hesitated. He looked through his papers, flipping pages nervously. I need time to review this. He stammered. The judge nodded slowly. You'll get your time, but right now, it appears the defense has presented serious evidence of forgery. The girl continued to speak. Her tone was calm, but her words hit hard. She showed emails, phone records, and bank slips that connected the main witness to another person, someone from the rival company that had always wanted to destroy her father's business. As she talked, the people in the courtroom started whispering. The story was turning upside down. The man everyone thought was guilty was now looking like a victim. Her father sat silently, watching her. His eyes were full of emotion, pride, disbelief, and love all at once. After a long day of hearing and reviewing documents, the judge finally said, "This case is not as simple as it appeared. We'll take a short break before continuing." When the session ended, she stepped outside the courtroom to take a breath. Reporters were waiting near the entrance, asking questions. Cameras flashed. "How did you find all this?" one of them asked. She smiled politely and said, "I just paid attention to what everyone else ignored." Then she walked away. Outside, the sky was cloudy. Her father joined her a few minutes later. "You did something no one thought was possible," he said quietly. She looked at him and said, "We're not done yet. There's still more to uncover." The fake signature was just the start. They went home and sat together at the kitchen table, surrounded by files. Her father looked tired, but she could see hope in his eyes for the first time in weeks. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, she heard a soft knock at the door. She froze. It was too late for visitors. Carefully, she opened the door a little, but no one was there. Only an envelope was lying on the floor. She picked it up, her hands shaking slightly. Inside was a single piece of paper with a message written in messy handwriting. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Her heart pounded. She closed the door quickly and locked it. For a few seconds, she stood silently, thinking. Then she tore the paper in half and threw it into the trash. "They're trying to scare me," she whispered, "but I'm not backing down." The next morning, she went straight to meet a retired lawyer who was a friend of her father. She told him everything, the fake documents, the threats, the strange messages. The old lawyer listened carefully and then said, "You're brave, child, but bravery alone isn't enough. You need protection. Bring me the papers, I'll help you file them properly. We'll expose whoever did this the right way." She nodded, grateful for the help. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone. A few days later, they returned to court. The old lawyer joined her at the table, but she was still the one who spoke most of the time. She presented everything, the forged documents, the false witness, the money transfers between the rival company and the prosecutor's key witness. This time, no one laughed, no one doubted her. The courtroom was silent except for her steady voice and the sound of papers being turned. When she finished, she looked at the judge and said softly, "All my father wanted was a fair chance. Now you know the truth. I just hope justice will finally see it too." The judge didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "Young lady, your courage has done more than most lawyers could do in their entire careers. I will review every piece of this evidence carefully." Her father reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. For the first time in months, he smiled a real smile, full of relief. As they walked out of the courtroom, the same people who once whispered behind their backs now clapped softly. Some even came forward to shake her hand. She didn't say much, just smiled politely. But deep down, she knew the fight wasn't completely over yet. There were still people who wanted to hide the truth. But now she wasn't afraid. She had faced them with nothing but honesty, and it had already shaken their power. That night, as she looked at the courtroom photo in the newspaper, her standing beside her father, both smiling, she felt a quiet strength inside her. She whispered to herself, "No matter what happens next, I've already won the biggest battle. I didn't let fear silence me." And from that moment, she knew her life had changed forever. What started as a daughter defending her father had turned into something